The fork hit the plate with a metallic clang. My father's hand froze mid-air, his knuckles pale, his face drained of color. The brunch had been warm, noisy, ordinary, until my grandfather, with his trembling voice, smiled across the table and said, "I'm glad you're enjoying the apartment I bought you." I didn't even think before I answered. My voice slipped out, low and sharp. "I live in a basement." The laughter stopped. My cousin's glass hovered above her lips. My mother's eyes darted to my father. The room held its breath. I never wanted to humiliate him like that, at least not then. But sometimes the truth claws its way out, raw and undeniable. Growing up, I trusted him. He was the father who lifted me onto his shoulders at parades, who promised I'd never go without. And when I started university, Grandpa told me proudly he'd bought me an apartment, my own place, stability, a future. Except I never saw it. Dad said the paperwork was complicated, said he'd handle it for me, said I should just focus on my studies. I believed him. For years I believed him. Meanwhile, I lived in a damp basement, mildew seeping through the walls, rats scratching behind the pipes at night. I worked shifts between classes to cover bills. And each time I asked, Dad brushed me off with a new excuse. But the cracks showed. The new car he suddenly drove, the vacations he and Mom flaunted, the way my sister, the golden child, started hinting at her investment property. I didn't need a confession. I pieced it together on my own. He'd stolen the apartment, my inheritance, my stability, and he thought I was too naive or too loyal to notice. He was wrong. I didn't rage, I didn't scream, I planned. I spent weeks collecting documents, property records, bank transfers, screenshots of texts where he dismissed me. I tracked the apartment's deed, registered under his name, not mine. Step 1 was knowledge. Step 2 was timing. My birthday brunch gave me both. When Grandpa asked that question, it was the perfect trigger. And when I dropped my whisper into the room, I knew what would follow. The silence wasn't awkward, it was surgical. My grandfather's smile faltered. His hand shook as he set down his coffee. "What do you mean, basement?" he asked. I looked straight at him. "I never got the apartment. I've been living in a rented basement since college." All eyes turned to my father. He opened his mouth, then closed it, stammered. Sweat prickled his forehead. I let the moment stretch, tightening around him like a noose. Then I pulled out the envelope. I'd brought it with me, just in case. Inside, copies of the deed, bank records, proof. I slid it onto the table. Grandpa's wrinkled hands fumbled with the pages, his lips pressed thin as he read. Then he looked at my father with disgust, sharper than I'd ever seen in his eyes. "You stole from your own child?" The words cracked like a gavel. My mother gasped. My sister's face pale. Dad muttered excuses about protecting assets, about family investments. I didn't argue. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke louder than his lies. The brunch dissolved into chaos, accusations, tears, my father's voice rising, pleading. But I sat still, calm, watching, because the real blow hadn't landed yet. 3 days earlier, I'd filed paperwork transferring the apartment back into my name. Grandpa's original purchase gave me leverage, and my lawyer moved fast once he saw the fraud. By the time my father scrambled to recover, it was already gone from his grip. The final act came quietly. A week later, movers carried my few belongings out of the basement and into the apartment that should have been mine all along. Sunlight streamed through tall windows. Hardwood floors gleamed beneath my feet. Meanwhile, Dad faced Grandpa's wrath, the family's judgment, and the silent collapse of his authority. My sister refused to speak to him. My mother cried behind closed doors. And me? I lived in peace. Sometimes I wonder if my father regrets it. If he lies awake, haunted by the moment his fork hit the plate, when the truth he buried clawed its way to the surface. But that's not my burden anymore. Betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from blood. But justice tastes sweeter when it's carved out of their arrogance. I don't need his apologies. I don't need his approval. I have the apartment. I have the proof. And every time I unlock that door, I remember the look on his face when silence exposed him. That silence was my birthday gift.